Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the last issue briefing of the annual meeting of the New Champions 2016, and possibly the most relevant and crucial and critical for the meeting and what we hold dear and believe in very strongly at this meeting, which is science, technology, and innovation. So we're kind of wrapping up, but we're wrapping up in a slightly different way. With the take, we're putting on the fourth industrial revolution, the industrial era we're about to embark upon, which is a merging and a melding of a whole myriad of new technologies and innovations in business models and ways of engagement. But we're going to ask some of the younger people who've been participating, some of the younger leaders at this meeting. All three of the people I'm joined by today are young scientists, a community that is convened and brought together by the World Economic Forum, so that they can participate, so that the youngest, brightest stars of science from around the world and a range of disciplines can participate, can contribute thinking and meet with leaders of business and government and make sure that their voice is heard and that their thinking is heard, and hopefully, we can start the process of really putting together the kinds of change that we need if we're going to address the global, regional, industry challenges that we know we face. My name is Oliver Kahn. I'm a member of the media team here at the World Economic Forum. I'm not going to talk for very much longer because we only have half an hour. Issue briefings are all about interchange. We try to keep things as rapid as possible. We only have 30 minutes, so I encourage you all to put up your hand on the panel here and here in the audience. If you have a comment or a question, please do shout. We have microphones around the room. We encourage dissent and disagreement everywhere so we can get things, get the party started. Now, I'm going to just introduce briefly my three panelists here. On my immediate left is Gerardo Adesso, Associate Professor, University of Nottingham in the United Kingdom. Amanda Randalls, Assistant Professor, Biomedical Engineering, Duke University. Bjorn Schuller, a reader, Imperial College, London in the United Kingdom. Again, Bjorn, if I'm not mistaken, it's your second annual meeting of the New Champion. You have a head start on Amanda, and Gerardo, I believe, is your first. I'm going to start very, very basically by asking you all what your biggest key takeaway has been from this meeting so far. Gerardo, let's start with you.
Thank you very much. Well, for me, this has been a very different event. I normally travel for scientific conferences, but this for me has been a very interesting experience of being exposed to completely different environments. So having the chance to interact with global leaders like politicians, the Chinese Premier, the Canadian Minister for Innovation, and as well as other young scientists in different disciplines, which are far away from mine, but still do stimulating science, and also tech pioneers, so entrepreneurs that maybe transition from academia into their own ventures. And this reminded me that basically scientists have some responsibility towards society to actually get out of the ivory tower of academia and communicate and have an impact on the wider public. So we had conversations with the president of the European Research Council, Professor Bourguignon, which is the institution, the organization which funds my research, and the editor-in-chief of Nature in one of our breakfasts with the delegation of young scientists. And it was really interesting to see what are the challenges and the opportunities that we have in order to achieve impact beyond the academia. Okay, so we have to disseminate without, let's say, dumbing down, but without overhyping, clearly communicating to the public. We have a responsibility, a stewardship towards the taxpayers who are supporting our work in order to present our plans, our outcomes. And this has been really stimulating for me. So I think we have to try much harder. So in particular, I'm in the UK now. There's been this referendum, and then I see it as a missed opportunity. We failed as scientists to communicate to the public, even to local communities, how important it is for us to have European support, to be integrated into the European community, how important it is for the development and leadership of science in the United Kingdom, and how science is important for society at large. So I will go back with a lot of inspiration about doing more than just, being a leader in science. It takes a lot more in order to drive forward and address the challenges of the world.
And of course, as young scientists, we expect you to be a leader and to work more closely with business and politics, but we also expect you to be brilliant continuously in your own field as well. So tell us a little bit more about where you're at in quantum computing, I believe is your discipline. In layman's terms, I'm not an expert.
Yes.
And where you're going, where you hope to go forward in terms of pushing boundaries in that science.
Okay, so I am by formation a theoretical physicist, and at the moment I work in the School of Mathematical Sciences, so I'm pretty much a basic scientist. And my field of specialization is quantum information theory, which is basically developing the theory for quantum technologies. At the moment, if you look at the description of what is this fourth industrial revolution that we are celebrating and discussing with this meeting, this is not driven by a single breakthrough like, say, steam engines in the mid-18th century, which was the first industrial revolution, but a confluence of several emerging technologies which overall are going to make a very rapid impact transformation for our society. One of these technologies is quantum-based technologies. And so at the moment, already in the last couple of years, there have been huge investments, for instance, in the country where I live, the United Kingdom, for translation from fundamental science into technologies. And examples can be developing better sensors that can have applications in biomedical sector or navigation. You can have simulators in order to study the physics of complex systems that you cannot do with normal computers. You could do it with quantum simulators, and this can help, for instance, accelerating drug delivery and discovery of new materials, and other applications, for instance, in secure communication. This is something which is already commercial, like cryptography, because at the moment the existing schemes for encrypting data are not fundamentally secure. They can be beaten if you have enough computing power. And with quantum cryptography, you can develop a system which is protected by the laws of physics and is fundamentally secure. And this is something already commercial. For instance, in Switzerland, they use quantum cryptography to secure voting in the elections. They used it also during the World Cup in South Africa. So technologies are moving forward. And at the moment, there's been a huge push also with the involvement of different companies like Google and Microsoft and Intel in the Netherlands and so on, for actually bringing these technologies into the real world. Okay, so at the moment we still are quite far away in some of the aspects, for instance, quantum computing, but we are progressing much faster in, say, quantum communication. And China, for instance, is a pioneer in this. There's been this announcement that I think by the end of this year there will be a network of satellites that will be put in orbit by China. It's coordinated by eminent scientists in China, Professor Zhang Weipan. And this will serve the purpose of establishing a global network of secure communication based on quantum principles. Now, what I do in Nottingham, we still do research that at the moment is on the fundamental side. So investigating what are the resources which allow quantum technologies to be more efficient than the classical ones. And what I expect is that my research will feed into the next generation of quantum technologies, the one that can be more robust and more resilient towards environmental noise.
Amanda, we'll come back to this, you raised some really important points here, and a lot of it is second-guessing where these technologies are going to be deployed, where possibly we didn't expect them to be. So let's think about that a little bit. But let's first talk about you, Amanda. You're a biomedical engineer, so where are you taking your branch of science?
Yeah, so I just switched over to Duke from Lawrence Livermore National Lab last year, where I was coming from a high-performance computing standpoint. So my background's really in physics. My PhD's from Harvard in physics, and I'm trying to take both like the physics approach, the computational approach, and build models to really understand disease. And we're taking patient-specific images, so we're getting data from like MR, CT scans, and getting vascular geometries and trying to model blood flow through these vascular geometries. So the direction we've gone in is trying to really understand how do you model someone at the human scale or at large regions of the vasculature. So the latest work we've done is trying to model blood flow in the entire arterial network. So to do that, you need to have large-scale supercomputers. We had to use the systems at Lawrence Livermore National Lab with 1.6 million processors. So it's kind of building on a lot of what we're seeing and talking about this week of this fusion between biology, physical systems, and the computational technology, and bringing that. I think we've seen that a lot in the narrative throughout all of these sessions this week. Is really just building on the integration of these different parts, and that's where my work is really trying to head towards. Is how do we leverage the advances in technology as well as in the biomedical to really understand the origin of vascular disease, how it's going to progress, and try to help target better therapies. And it's kind of interesting being here and talking about it this week, where maybe last week, China came out with the fastest supercomputer in the world is right now 124 petaflops here in China. And one of the big questions then is like, now that we have these big systems, what can we do with them? And how do we actually, how do we leverage them and make really real breakthroughs from the scientific perspective? And in America, we're trying to build a 200 petaflop system in the next few years. And a lot of my work is focused on, what can we do with these? What kind of discoveries can we make with these systems? And how do we use them to target questions like vascular biology, cancer, and target some of the biomedical questions in that area?
Bjorn, second year running as a young scientist, how has the experience changed this year? And how is your progress in your own research evolved over the past 12 months?
So talking about the change with the second year, I would say you're much more brave to go out there and really speak to the people that in the first time you're just amazed to be with. I mean, this time we had Premier Li Keqiang. I couldn't talk to him. We also were able to talk to Minister Navdeep Bains, and in fact, just this morning I met with him and actually was brave enough to go there and talk with him, and it's an amazing experience to not only talk with people from a distance, but really go there and talk with them individually. And also you're getting a whole new perspective, because in the first time you're just first confronted with a whole new perspective, as we've heard from the colleagues, like looking at communication with society, communication with decision makers. But now you're more and more getting the feeling that you're really belonging to a world where this matters and not only seeing it.
And what about your own work? I believe in machine learning, if I remember from our conversation last year.
Yes.
How's that going? I mean, it was only several hours into this meeting when I was talking to a journalist who was talking about an AI winter, due to the fact that there's so much, a lot of hype building up around this particular area. How would you comment on that, for example?
Yeah. So the hype was quite useful in a way to me last time, because I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to give a talk in the beta zone. That was amazing. But of course, there's a lot of concern about machine learning, artificial intelligence, and what it can do to society, in particular in the context of the fourth industrial revolution. So we have big data, we have deep learning as big buzzwords out there, the omnipresence of monitoring of people. To us, this interplay in the fourth industrial revolution of different disciplines is giving a lot of opportunities, because we can combine the ever-present collection of data, big data from individuals, to do some almost miracles in healthcare and really disruptive changes there, providing ever-present health state analysis, collecting data from your speech, from your audio environment, collecting data from your movements on the wrist to predict your next seizure if you were epileptic, to predict your level of depression, to predict all sorts of health-relevant things. At the same time, there is quite some concern that the fourth industrial revolution will deprive us of our souls, will make us more robotized in society, more addictive to technology, and will change our social interaction patterns. At this point, we are very much trying to put some emotion and warmth into machines by doing effective computing. So we're lending machines emotional intelligence, social intelligence, giving them the ability to understand our emotion, react to it, for the sake of better communication with individuals, but maybe also for the sake of, giving back some social touch to robots, to machines.
Social AI, of course, one of the top 10 emerging technologies of 2016, published by the World Economic Forum last year. Apologies for the pitch. Okay, I've talked enough. We've talked enough. Any questions from you guys? Okay, gentleman on the front row.
Hi, Sebastian, Global Shaper from Sebastian Code, Global Shaper from Hong Kong. So we have our own community here. I was just wondering, from your young scientist community, do you have any advice for reaching out to other communities to communicate your ideas, or to, cross-pollinate and get ideas from, people who you don't normally speak with? And yeah, either from a young scientist perspective or just general kind of perspective. Thank you.
I think this is a very interesting point. From my experience here, we have been more in touch with the tech pioneers. We have met with yours, like much more at in the corridor, say, or at the different other occasions. I think the general idea is to take it more home as well, and see if there's a good opportunity to network and find a way to communicate outside also of these 3-4 days, and get in touch in other ways of the means we have been seeing and discussing these days.
Anything to add?
Yeah, just kind of building on the same idea of we've had a few of the interactions with some of the other networks, and it'd be great to have other ways of interacting with like the young global leaders, the global shapers. Yeah, it's hard. It's a little difficult, but I think going back, and it seems like the young global leaders have put forward like that Druid collective where they're trying to really help people who want to get involved on the entrepreneurial side. I think having more programs centered around that are allowing us to communicate once we leave the forum, and kind of building and using a lot of the community aspect is something we should try to focus on a bit more.
And hopefully as well, this is just one meeting throughout a year of collaboration, so we hope you maintain the ties you make at this meeting. Let's just go back to one of the points that you made, Amanda, about the supercomputers that are being built here in China, and maybe an even more powerful one being built in the US. And you raised a very valid point. What do we do with all these things? We're generating and creating so much scientific capacity, but are we really channeling it for the right reasons? So are we really getting an effective use of this great capacity in solving the challenges? Are we aligned, we all lined up and linked into the same challenges here?
Yeah, I think it's kind of building the same idea of a lot of what they're really going after this week of like, we're not really in our little silos anymore. We're not just, the computer scientists making this really great supercomputer. It's the problems we're starting to run into is now that we're pushing the bounds of how you can actually program to it. And it takes, trying to get the application scientists to be able to understand what the power is, how you can actually leverage it, and how to use it is a significant challenge aside from just trying to build the system itself. And I think that's where we're having a lot of international communities trying to really help learn from, how have we learned how to program the systems in the States versus the systems in other countries. And there has been a lot more interaction on that side, but the focus now is really on, how do we build these applications and what can we do with it? And we're making a lot of progress, but there's definitely a lot more that needs to be done. Like from our side, it's looking at hemodynamics and doing blood flow modeling has been a huge focus in the last few years throughout the supercomputing community. And we've learned a lot more on, how do we model the brain and how do we model like the heart disease and like focusing on different areas, but trying to kind of bring what we're learning from the way we're scaling out is very similar to how people are modeling the weather and modeling like other application areas, that unless you have platforms kind of similar to this where you're talking to people from completely different fields and learning how they're using these systems, it's difficult to bring that back together. And I think a lot of focus, especially from the policy side, has been trying to create, how do we fund these supercomputers, how do we get them, and the focus really needs to shift now on, okay, well, how do we use them and what can we do?
And beyond, some of the applications in your field are more commercial than others. How are you reconciling that?
So the applications that are most commercial at the moment is really centered around effective computing. As this is really a highly novel technology to, as I said, make machines more social again and emotional again. I think in machine learning, in the context of the fourth industrial revolution, there's also a huge promise in terms of interplay with complex systems engineering, because fourth industrial revolution in particular requires us to make very fast-paced decisions, to be extremely fast in very complex decisions. So I think that these kinds of combinations of complex systems modeling and machine learning will be very commercializable soon if we have more and more governance support, management support, driven from big data analysis in real time.
Lady at the back, yeah. We'll take both questions. And then
Thank you. I'm Jocelyn Ford with US Public Radio. I'd like to, there's been a lot of discussion this week about the fears of the speed of which technology is changing the world that we live in. And I'm wondering if you could all talk about what you think is the greatest misplaced fear, and also what you think is the greatest, your own concerns about the advances in your own field. What abuse, what negative use could that be put to? What is your fear about what is being developed in your
the dark side of the fourth industrial revolution? I love it. That was my next question too. We'll take the next one and we'll answer them in turn.
Hi everyone, I'm also the global shaper. from the Chengdu Hubs. My question about, you are both from the university and the professor of the university. How will the education change in the fourth revolution? Okay.
Okay, let's do
Thank
the
you very
dark
much.
side. The dark side first. Bjorn, your killer robots are right up your street.
Yes.
Let's start with you.
That's a classic for us. Machine learning is always coming with the concern these days of robots and machines taking over, of course. This is a very misplaced fear in my eyes, because we're very far, if it ever happens, from machines that have this level of consciousness and self-organization that they will want to take over and are in a position to do this. So we will certainly remain. But a much more realistic fear is, of course, the one of big data analysis and privacy threat. So we're having a lot of surveillance these days. We're collecting a lot of data. A lot of this data is given voluntarily to organizations collecting it without putting thought into it, what may be derived from this data. So in my eyes, that is probably the much more serious threat than the concern to have machines taking over soon.
Amanda?
Yeah, I
You're
think,
doing things to the human body.
yeah,
What can go wrong there, huh?
I think a lot of the issues, the challenge we run into is the question of security and data information. Of, you know, if we're modeling, if we take the imaging data and we model and decide this person is prone to have heart disease, I think people are scared of, is that information going to go back to the insurance agencies? Like, who gets access to that data, and how is that going to be used? Is that going to go to your employer? Is that going to go? And that kind of brings out a lot of fears and questions on that side. And I think there's kind of two parts where that's similar to the machine learning side. We're not really, first off, the technology is not there at that point. Like, we're not ready to feed that kind of information, and people kind of get ahead of themselves in what they get afraid of and what they think is going to happen. And a lot of the issues we end up running into is also even just getting a level of trust of, you know, proving that what we're actually simulating from the computational angle is usable and something that has value, because a lot of people just see it as, you know, this is what we're running on the simulation. It may not be actually very real. And a lot of that end, we're working very closely with a lot of the experimentalists to really kind of prove, like, we're 3D printing the geometries that we're running the simulations through, and comparing our simulation results to experiments in these 3D printouts. And the challenge we're having is really trying to convince stakeholders that aren't coming from a computational side that this kind of information has value.
Jade.
Okay, so let's just remind, historically, in the 1920s, with the development of quantum mechanics, people just got a more precise understanding of the atoms, and then eventually all the founding fathers of quantum mechanics, almost all of them, got together into Manhattan Project, and then they did the atomic bomb. So there's always the danger that with some advances in physics, when we discover something fundamentally new about the world, this can be used for bad. Now, coming more concretely, in the case of the advent of quantum technologies, if you develop a quantum computer tomorrow that is able to factor large products of prime numbers, then all the communications as used today, encrypted by the RSA, become immediately insecure, because they rely on the fact that if you take two numbers and you multiply them, it's easy to get the result. But if you just get the result that you want to go back to the factors, that's hard. But it's hard, but with the quantum computer, it's not hard anymore, okay? So, but the thing is, quantum technologies are also advancing with solutions. So at the same time, they are bringing new solutions for security and encrypted communication that make all this other insecure communication not needed anymore. So I think in the fourth industrial revolution, one thing that worries me a lot is this huge boom of the Internet of Things. And I think all this Internet of Things is fundamentally insecure. There will be lots of devices connected, very easy to hack. So I think we have to develop solutions from first principles in order to ensure security. So for instance, one of the most recent developments in quantum information theory and quantum technologies is called device-independent approach to security. So you might buy some device, but maybe this can be hacked, or maybe there is some eavesdropper which is trying to still control your communication somehow. And then you have some enforced measures of security that are based on the existence of stronger correlations allowed by quantum physics, which allow you to be secure even without trusting your own devices. So sometimes, for instance, if you think about cloud computing, you can imagine that maybe your own receiver, your own apparatus is secure, maybe you built it or you tested, but then you don't trust the server. So you can have situations where you exploit partial or one-sided device independence in order to be able to accomplish computations or communications without having to know the specifics of the server, without trusting it, but we have still measures to identify threats and correct for them. This is something that comes only in quantum theory.
The Internet of Insecure Things. What a chilling prospect. Let's get to the lady's question here about education. It's an interesting one because one of our co-chairs, Shirley-Ann Jackson from Rensselaer Polytechnic, speaks very eloquently and articulately on the need for placing universities and learning at the heart of the fourth industrial revolution. Are you seeing any changes in the way that education throughout the different grades and levels is adapting to meet the changing world we're in?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't have my first computer until I was maybe 10 or 11. That was exceptional. Well, now children, when they are already 2, 3 years old, they know much better than us how to use tablets and go on the internet, and they do these things in school. So I think we have the possibility of accessing a lot of information immediately and being connected globally. This is helping. Okay, it has to be somehow still obey some rules, okay? So we don't have to replace the traditional methods of learning just by this immediate access to information. People have to develop the ability to discover, they have to develop the value of meeting in person, collaboration, discussion, but barriers come down. We become much closer. And this, I think, if used properly, it's a huge advantage.
But is education up to the challenge?
I think so. I think what we're seeing a lot is similar to the ideas being pushed forth with the fourth industrial revolution, where it's all very interdisciplinary, and a lot of our programs are really pushing you have to take like the math classes, the life science classes, as well as the computing classes, and it's drawing from the different perspectives, and we're kind of we're changing how we're teaching a bit. You're seeing a lot more problem-driven courses, a lot of like the flipped classroom where instead of just lecturing, you're having them do the problems in class together. And I think we are starting to try to adapt to bring in these different disciplines in a tractable way. And like doing that from not just at the college level, but starting much earlier. I don't know, at least in the US, there's definitely a lot more interaction where we bring in a lot of the high school students and elementary students to the university and have a lot of programs to really integrate and teach them from that side and kind of expose them early. And I think there's been an increased focus on that side at least.
We're running perilously short of time, so if I may, I'd quite like to get one last question into double header. I'd love you, and we're talking all over the place about interdisciplinary sciences, and I want you to put yourself outside of your zone, and I'd love you all to tell us what outside of your own discipline, what the most exciting science is to you right now, and also what's been the greatest idea you've heard at this meeting? What a pitch, what can have the greatest change in the world? Let's start with you, Bjorn.
So that is a little bit of a challenge given how many exciting things we've heard. I think the most exciting single science is a little bit hard to say. It's much more about the interplay, and that's all what fourth industrial revolution is about. We've heard tremendous things in bioengineering these days.
I'll let you have an interplay. It doesn't need to be one particular science, but outside of machine learning, where is the most exciting discovery taking place in your view?
Yeah. So to me, the exciting thing is really the opportunities we're seeing in healthcare and data analysis these days for well-being and monitoring health.
Any great ideas? Any brainwaves that have occurred during this meeting? Anybody pitched you with an idea you thought was truly amazing?
Yes, definitely. So there's a lot of ideas around how we can use more sensors, other forms of interaction data analysis to identify and pre-diagnose other diseases and conditions.
Gerardo, you're nodding your head. Let's go to you next.
Yeah, I was inspired by many of these ideas lab, and in particular yesterday we had some which was led by the European Research Council, and it was about antibiotic resistance. I really liked one of the presentations where they were proposing methods to boost or turbocharge our immune system in order to better protect ourselves against these bacteria which are resistant to antibiotics at the moment. This was very interesting. And another one I heard was about navigating the brain in order to identify only the cancer cells and then act on them without damaging the healthy ones. And then they are developing, this is at the Imperial College as well, they're developing some technology which is like the equivalent of a sat-nav in order to navigate at the cellular level. And this is something which inspires me. I think we can even improve the resolution if we can integrate this with some quantum technology, quantum sensing, but it's very premature at the moment.
And if you weren't in quantum computing right now, where would you be?
Well, in quantum computing, we didn't hear much here, but I think the quantum metrology is one of the perspectives that is stimulating the most for me. In particular, there are some challenges which are created by the development of other technologies, like, for instance, additive manufacturing, 3D printing. Now everything, very complex structures can be built. But of course, you need to include some control methods in order to make sure that these are grown precisely, and they are very complex features, so it's very hard for conventional microscopes to go there and image this situation. So this creates a challenge, whereas we can use our methods in order to develop some inline modules for metrology integrated with additive manufacturing. So properly monitor and control the 3D printing of complex structures. And I think we have scope for it. We are trying in Nottingham to collaborate with engineers in order to start these developments.
Amanda?
Yeah, so and there were a lot of really exciting topics this week.
You're not allowed to say that. You've got to get down to one.
I really liked the attosecond imaging techniques. Personally, I thought the gravitational waves discussion was fantastic. It's one of the biggest discoveries this year, and getting to hear from the researchers that actually did that work was pretty exciting from my end. Being able to actually have experiments to validate predictions we've seen, for however 80 years or so. That I think that's a really powerful, really exciting opportunity. Bringing stuff, like a lot of the discussions on the machine learning side, it kind of made me start thinking about, okay, how can I use machine learning in my own work more and go back and create more predictive models that might kind of supplement the simulation data. So I feel like I've taken a lot out of this, and it leaves you very excited and inspiring, so it's good.
And I hope the three of you will be working together on many projects. We've come to the end of this session, which is always regrettable, but hopefully this has given you a glimpse into the fourth industrial revolution, the future of it, and the future leaders of the fourth industrial revolution shaping the science. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us here in the room, and thanks for watching live online. This session is now over.